Hi everyone, it is Atia. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. And today we are getting into the 9 Black classics that are on my 2026 TBR. I have made it a goal, starting with last year, 2025, to read more Black classics and just become more versed in Black classics. And my goal for last year was to read one a month, or like a total of 12. And I do want to give you like a rundown of how I did and also what I read, which Black classics I read in 2025. And I did not meet my 12 total goal, but I did read 7 Black classics that I thoroughly enjoyed. And we're going to start off, well, actually, this isn't even in the order that I read them. I don't even know why I was saying that, but I read The Street by Ann Petry. Probably should have given these, should pull up their ratings, right? That's like helpful information to know. Let me do that to the story graph. All right. I now have the ratings for these Black classics that I read in 2025. I read The Street by Ann Petry, which was one that I've been wanting to read for years. So I'm so glad that I finally read it in November, and I gave that one 5 stars. I read Jazz by Toni Morrison. I gave that one 3.75 stars. I reread Beloved by Toni Morrison, which I think this is my 3rd reread. So this is my 4th time reading it, and I gave it 5 stars, hence why I reread it. It is still to date my favorite Morrison book. I am making my way through her works, and I have a few, I think I have 2 that I need to reread, and then a few more that I need to read. And so far, Beloved has remained my favorite. Then I also read Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I gave that one 4.5 stars. I read Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison and gave that 4.5 stars. No, I gave that one 4.75 stars. I read The Color Purple, finally another one that I really want to get to, by Alice Walker, 5 stars. And then to round it off, the 7th one was Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin, and I gave that one 4 stars.
Editing Atia here, and I totally forgot that I DNF'd a classic, and that was Mama Day by Gloria Naylor. And yeah, we weren't gelling. It wasn't for me.
So I didn't complete the goal, but for this being the first year that I did that, like 1 classic a month, like that being my goal, I did pretty well. And then we're going to head into what is my TBR for 2026. I don't have like 12 books on here. I didn't have 12 books on my hopefuls list last year. At least I don't think so. Just to give me some room to, like, maybe I hear about a classic that sounds really interesting, and, just to give me some wiggle room. And also my TBR list, I'm never fully locked into them. That's why I call them hopefuls most of the times, because it's just what I'm picking from, and not me putting this up here. Yeah, so we're just gonna jump in. I will say that most of the classics on this list, 8 out of the 9, I own physically, which will help me with my goal of reading down my physical TBR. There's only one that I do not own yet, but we're gonna jump right in. The first book is going to be another Ann Petry. This is The Narrows. It's a bit thicker than The Street, but not by much, honestly. And I got this one kind of on a whim a little bit. I got it because I think 2 years ago, I accidentally spilled water on my copy of The Street. And I was distraught because I thought it was a beautiful edition. It's like this, it's like textured, this style. And so I rebought it. And at the time that I was rebuying it, they were doing a like buy one, get one half off, or buy 2, get the 3rd free, something like that. And I was like, and this was one of the options. I think all of her books were an option for that sale. And so I was like, let me just get another Ann Petry because I have a feeling I'm going to like The Street and I want to have another one of hers on hand. And so I picked The Narrows. And this says, a masterpiece of social realism about a tragic love affair in a sleepy 1950s New England town. It's Saturday past midnight, and thick fog rolls in from the river like smoke. Link Williams is standing on the dock when he hears quick footsteps approaching and the gasp of a woman too terrified to scream. After chasing off her attacker, he takes the woman to a nearby bar to calm her nerves, and as they enter, it's as if the oxygen has left the room. They and the other patrons see in the dim light that he's Black and she's white. Link is a brilliant Dartmouth graduate, former athlete, and soldier who, because of the lack of opportunities available to him, tends bar. Camillo is a wealthy married woman, dissatisfied and bored with her life of privilege. Thrown together by a chance encounter, Both Link and Camillo secretly cross the town's racial divide, defying the social prejudices of their times. It just seems like it's going to be deliciously messy and probably have brilliant character work, a lot like The Street. And I'm very much looking forward to this one. I mean, I'm looking forward to all of these, but this one especially I've had my eye on. But I wanted to read The Street first before I read this. The next three books are all Toni Morrison. They are. And I have no regrets about that. This is another one that I've always been eyeing, but I wanted to read more of her works before I read it. I don't know why. I just like make up these rules in my head, I guess. But it is Home by Toni Morrison. All I know about this is that I believe it is like a retelling or inspired by or takes the narrative form of the Odyssey, which I think is just like so cool and it's so thin too. So I'm wondering how she does that or how she's going to do that. When Frank Money joined the army to escape his too small world, he left behind his cherished and fragile little sister, C. After the war, his shattered life has no purpose until he hears that C is in danger. Frank is the modern Odysseus returning to a 1950s America mined with lethal pitfalls for an unwary black man. As he journeys to his native Georgia in search of C, it becomes clear that their troubles began well before their wartime separation. Together, they return to their rural hometown of Lotus, where buried secrets are unearthed and where Frank learns at last what it means to be a man, what it takes to heal, and above all, what it means to come home. So yeah, I mean, this is like what, less than 200 pages? Yeah, really less than 150. That's incredible. I could probably knock this out in like a sitting or two, but that's the first Toni Morrison, and that is Home. The second one is actually a reread for me, and that is Sula. And I've read this, I want to say in college. Yeah, I read this in college, and this is actually my college edition because I have underlining and such things. So it says, two girls who grow up to become women, two friends who become something worse than enemies. In this brilliantly imagined novel, Nobel Peace Laureate Toni Morrison tells the story of Nell Wright and Sula Peace, who meet as children in the small town of Medallion, Ohio. Their devotion is fierce enough to withstand bullies and the burden of a dreadful secret. It endures even after Nell has grown up to be the pillar of the Black community and Sula has become a pariah. But their friendship ends in an unforgivable betrayal, or does it? Terrifying, comic, ribald, and tragic, Sula is a work that overflows with life. I don't remember much about this book, but I remember that there is drama. There is drama. I do remember that. And then the third Toni Morrison is actually one that I wanted to get to in December, but I didn't. And it is Paradise. This one is, I believe, the third one in like the Beloved trilogy, if you will, where they're all dealing with like some kind of haunting, I think. And I read Jazz. I reread Beloved and then I read Jazz last year. So to finish up that unconventional trilogy, we are reading Paradise. And it says, they shoot the white girl first. With the rest, they can take their time. So begins Toni Morrison's Paradise, which opens with a horrifying scene of mass violence and chronicles its genesis in an all-Black small town in rural Oklahoma. Founded by the descendants of freed slaves and survivors in exodus from a hostile world, the patriarchal community of Ruby is built on righteousness, rigidly enforced moral law, and fear. But 17 miles away, another group of exiles has gathered in a promised land of their own. And it is upon these women in flight from death and despair that 9 male citizens of Ruby will lay their pain, their terror, and their murderous rage. In prose that soars with the rhythms, grandeur, and tragic arc of an epic poem, Toni Morrison challenges our most fiercely held beliefs as she weaves folklore and history, memory and myth into an unforgettable meditation on race, religion, gender, and a far-off past that is ever present. I will probably be getting to this. This might be one of the first classes I get to in 2025 because I did want to get to in 2024. Like I even prepped it for reading and everything. But I definitely want to read it before I dive into Sula and Home. So yeah, those are the 3 Toni Morrison on my list. The next book I have here is Cain by Jean Toomer. I don't really know much about this. I know that I was intrigued by it when I first bought it, and I also just like love the artwork on the cover and the back as well. I find it to be very fun. It reminds me of what's her name? Ken Wiley. Oh my gosh, what's her name? She does the portraits. Kara Walker. It reminds me of the work of Kara Walker, who uses a Black silhouette art style, which I absolutely love. And this says, published in 1923, Jean Toomer's Cane is an innovative literary work, part drama, part poetry, part fiction. Oh wow, it is part poetry. Whoa, that's so cool. That is, wait, okay, let me go back. There's literally like poetry, it's prose and verse. Wow. Okay. Powerfully evoking Black life in the South. Rich in imagery, Toomer's impressionistic, sometimes surrealistic sketches of Southern, rural, and urban life are permeated by visions of smoke, sugarcane, dusk, and fire. The northern world is pictured as a harsher reality of asphalt streets. This iconic work of American literature is published with a new afterword by Rudolph P. Byrd of Emory University and Henry Louis Gates Jr. of Harvard University, who provide groundbreaking biographical information on Toomer, place his writing within the context of the Harlem Renaissance, and examine his pioneering critique of race and shifting claims about his own race. Okay, I might have to just bump this up to February. Huh. All right, and then we have James Baldwin. This is actually the last James Baldwin that I own. I need to go back to collecting his works. I think I don't own Another Country. I don't own his poetry books, but in terms of his prose, I think I have one or two left to collect. But in terms of physical collection, this is the last James Baldwin that I have, and that is If Beale Street Could Talk. I've been wanting to read this ever since the movie came out all those years ago, so I just need to do it so that I can then watch the movie. And in this honest and stunning novel, James Baldwin has given America a moving story about love in the face of injustice. Told through the eyes of Tish, a 19-year-old girl in love with Fonny, a young sculptor who is the father of her child. Baldwin's story mixes the sweet and the sad. Tish and Fonny have pledged to get married, but Fonny is falsely accused of a terrible crime and imprisoned. Their family set out to clear his name, and as they face an uncertain future, the young lovers experience a kaleidoscope of emotions, affection, despair, and hope, and a love story that evokes the blues, where passion and sadness are inevitably intertwined. Baldwin has created two characters so alive and profoundly realized that they are unforgettably ingrained in the American psyche. I mean, what a synopsis. I'm ready to be heartbroken and put back together all at once. Then we have Mumbo Jumbo by Ishmael Reed. It is the 1920s in New York City, and an epidemic known as Just Grew is sweeping the nation. A dancing plague, irresistible, joyful, and undeniably black. Naturally, the powers that be are having none of it. A repressive conspiracy is operating in the shadows and is dead set on squelching Just Grew and his carriers, black artists and musicians, by any means necessary. Now, with the very liberation of blackness at stake, just one man, Detective Papa LaBlasse, has the know-how required to save it. So begins a classic novel by Ishmael Reed, the iconic satirist whose myriad contributions to American literature have drawn praise from the likes of James Baldwin and Harold Bloom. Mumbo Jumbo is an ingenious deconstruction of Western civilization, a cinematic collage that mixes portraits of historical figures and incidents with sound bites on subjects ranging from ragtime to Greek philosophy. Now, with an introduction by the author, this timeless and crucial work of 20th century fiction is ready to be discovered by a new generation of readers. I'm excited. Then the next book is the one that I don't own yet, and it is The Chinaberry Tree by Jessie Redmon Fauset. I have the synopsis here. Adultery, incest, and the questions of racial identity simmer beneath the tranquil surface of suburban life in this novel, set in a small New Jersey town of the early 1900s. Lovely young Laurentine is obsessed with her bad blood, inherited from a common law interracial union. Proud and independent, she longs for the respectability of a conventional marriage. Laurentine's vivacious and self-confident cousin, Melissa, also aspires to marry up, but a family secret shadows Melissa's dreams and ambitions as she approaches an explosive revelation. The Chinaberry Tree draws upon elements of Greek tragedy and its powerful depiction of interracial love and marriage. The tale also offers a modern perspective on the struggle of its African-American heroines towards self-knowledge. And like, I became interested in reading Jessie Redmon Fauset when I was reading Harlem Rhapsody earlier this year, which I DNF'd. But anyway, it's supposed to be her story. And in it, they talk about this book that she's writing. And I was like, I didn't know. I knew like a little bit about her being a crucial part of the Harlem Renaissance, but I did not know that she in herself was an author. And so I was like, what's her most acclaim? And so this is her third book, but I'm excited to see what this brings. And then the last book in this TBR is actually the follow-up to The Color Purple, and that is The Temple of My Familiar. And this is one of the like older covers, but I kind of like really like it. And it says, first published in 1990, The Temple of My Familiar, Alice Walker's follow-up novel to her iconic The Color Purple, spent more than 4 months on the New York Times bestseller list and helped cement her status among the important writers in America. A visionary cast of characters weaves together past and present in a brilliantly intricate tapestry of tales. The resulting fabric tells the story of the dispossessed and displaced, of peoples whose history is ancient and whose future is unforeseen. Among them are Lissy, a woman of many pasts, Arveda, a great guitarist, and his Latin American wife who has had to flee her homeland. Suelo, a history teacher who realizes that his generation of men has failed as women, and his former wife Fanny, who has fallen in love with spirits. Hovering tantalizingly above their stories are Miss Celie and Shug, the beloved characters from The Color Purple. Described by the author as a romance of the last 500,000 years, The Temple of My Familiar follows three interrelated characters, most of African descent, and each representing a different ethnic strain, from diverse African tribes to the mixed bloods of Latin America, who contribute to the Black experience in America. So, yeah, these are the 9 books on my Black Classics TBR. Let me know which ones you've read, which ones you're excited to get to. Um, did you read any of the ones that I read in 2025 as well? And let me know if there are some other Black classics that should be on my radar. I mean, there are quite a few that are on my radar that I didn't mention in this list. These are just the 9 that I am most excited to get to and want to get to this year. But yeah, let me know, what are some Black classics that you have read and enjoyed? And make sure to give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I put out a new video. Also, make sure to check out my bonfire to get yourself some merch, as well as my Etsy shop to get yourself some bookmarks and the stickers coming on later in January. We are doing a buddy read of My Heart is a Chainsaw this month, so if you were interested in jumping in on that, make sure to check out the Discord, which is linked below. All of my socials are down below as well. And if you want to support the channel even more on a monthly basis, you can consider becoming a Patreon or a channel member. And I will see you in another video. Bye!
Showing. I ain't living for the moment. I see what's mine and I want it. Hungry like a Pac-Man. I'm Bruce Wayne and Batman. I'm Naruto with a Hanzo. Got a sharp mind like I'm Einstein. Poking copywriting, so it's all mine. Check it for me.